Hello, everyone. My name is Neha, and welcome to Dropping Your Armour, a podcast dedicated to unlocking our infinite human potential to shape the world around us. We listen to stories from thinkers, doers, and dreamers about things that really matter. Today we have with us Sonja Sinz, who is a facilitator, entrepreneur, a cat mom, that's very important, and above all, a truly inspiring person who is full of joy and on a mission to make the world more human, creative, and sustainable. She works closely with several leaders in many different organizations and helps them connect with their inner world to transform their outer world. Today we'll be talking about creating inclusive and creative spaces at work that are engaging and fulfilling for people. So welcome, Sonja. It's so good to have you here with us.
Thank you very much for the invite, Neha.
Great, Sonja. And I want to dive into this topic. It's also a topic that's very close to my heart, and I really want to unpack a lot of things with you. But before we do that, we want to start with the tune-in. And you and I have worked together, so you know that we always like to start sessions, workshops with a tune-in question, just to, get into the zone. So I have a tune-in question for you. When was the last time you did something for the first time?
When was the last time I did something for the first time? That's a really good one because it's a good one because normally I really seek out things to do them for the first time just for the sake of enjoying the adventure. But I have been a little bit under a lot of workload the last 1 or 2 weeks. So I'm really struggling to find something in my day-to-day life that would qualify for that. Oh yeah. For the first time ever, last week I planted the seeds to make one of my favorite dishes. So it's a dish from Frankfurt, and it consists of 7 herbs. And there are some standard herbs in there, but also kind of quirky herbs that you would normally not have in your garden.
Right.
And I sowed all the seeds for all the 7 different types of herbs so that hopefully a couple of weeks down the line, I'll be able to prepare that dish, that green sauce. It's what it's called.
What is this dish called?
In German or in English?
In German. I think it's a German dish, right? So you could tell us in German.
Frankfurter grüne Soße. Or as the locals call it, Grisauce.
Grisauce. Okay. That sounds nice. I like herby things, so.
Yeah, it's herbs and yogurt. It's not too different from a raita.
Ah, a raita. Yeah, I'm surprised you know about raitas, but great. I like raitas a lot. Okay. I was also thinking about this for a while for myself and, trying to come up with an answer to this. And it was incredibly hard because I also had a few busy weeks. But 2 weeks ago, I baked a cake from scratch. And that's something I truly have never done. When I was back in India, I used to get these Betty Crockers, cake mixes. And then it was rather easy, right? You just mix everything, you put it in an oven, and it's all done. But I got this recipe for a vegan flourless cake from one of my friends. And I baked it for the first time. It was a disaster. It wasn't great, but I was so proud that I really managed to bake something from scratch. And also I enjoyed it, even if it wasn't perfect.
Well, kudos to you for trying that.
Thanks. But that's something that after reading this question, I realized that that's something that, also relating to the topic that we wanted to discuss today, it's a reflective question, right? When was the last time you did something for the first time? And something we should ask ourselves from time to time so we don't fall into that monotony of everyday life.
Absolutely. I think it would be a cool team challenge for a month or a quarter to have that arrangement that everybody tries to do something new every day for the first time that they haven't done. And then each morning in the stand-up or in the check-in, you can talk about what was yesterday's first thing that you tried.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, something I would want to try with my team for sure. So Sonja, I really want to discuss this topic with you. And when we were, chatting a little while ago, you mentioned that this topic of creating inclusive and creative workspaces is very close to your heart. Could you tell us a little bit about why that is? What is your personal story behind this topic?
Sure. The reason why I came up with this topic of creating environments that embrace people and that are inclusive is because there were times in my life when I felt a little bit like the odd one out. And there was a phase in my life in which I struggled hard to fit in and to try and blend into what was expected of me. And I felt that this was not easy for me, and that cost me a lot of energy. And that's the reason why I keep asking the question, what if we could create workplaces in which people could just be the way they are, and we wouldn't drown people's talents and people's uniqueness in the standardizing and norming everything.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that experience. What was it like to be on the outside? If you have a few, I don't know, anecdotes around that experience.
Yeah, so I can only speculate, of course, what was going on behind the scenes and in people's heads. But I have the hypothesis that there were occasions when I was hired because of my creativeness and because of the high energy that I have and the different way I look at things. I think I would classify myself as a creative person, a little bit of an outside of the box thinker, but I'm also a challenger. So I have the tendency, if something doesn't feel right, to call that out and to say, for me, this feels odd somehow. And I sometimes ask general questions like, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this and this exercise, or of this and this standard process? And I sometimes ask questions like, hang on a minute, it sounds to me like we have people that serve processes instead of processes that serve people. Shouldn't it be the other way around? And why are our processes so cumbersome? And with these questions, I felt that sometimes they were not really welcome. And sometimes people got mad at me for being the one to make them feel uncomfortable. So the thing with people who question the status quo and think a little bit outside the box is people sometimes might feel offended by the questions that they get asked.
Yes, and that really reminds me of this model that we have of understanding the neuropsychological basis of fear and how we really tick. And I think you might even know this model better than me, but it's the 3 regulation systems that we have: a threat system, which is our biggest and the oldest system, which is tied to the amygdala in the brain. We have a drive system, which is about, embracing our curiosity and creativity and really positivity in the world. And then we have a soothing or a bonding system that helps us connect with other people. And it's interesting that you say this piece about offending or people, feeling uncomfortable when someone brings in a new idea or challenges them in a way, because my impression is that the threat system probably gets activated in that moment, right? We seek familiarity, and in a way our armor is what is familiar, what is comfortable for us. And when our threat system is activated, we can no longer connect with our drive system or, approach that situation with creativity and curiosity. But what's interesting about this model is also that in humans, the soothing system or the bonding system plays a major role in building a bridge between the drive system and the threat system and really powering that curiosity. So for me, in that workplace, that probably looks like is if when we extend that level of compassion to people and, connect with them and really become a part of a group, we create that safety around them to really, truly be creative and curious. Does that resonate?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And, sometimes maybe I didn't have that soothing touch in choosing my words. It would have been wiser probably to go in and say, what I'm saying now, I'm saying because I care about this workplace and I care about what we're doing here. And then bring the critical point instead of jumping right in with the critical point and then having people in a mode that they want to defend themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And I think even beyond those individual interactions, right? I see that the world right now, with the pace that it's moving, I feel like most of us are most of the time in our threat system, especially during these COVID times. You know, it's highly active, we're hyper vigilant, and safety is a big threat at this point in time. So part of those inclusive creative spaces is also creating those spaces that are socially fulfilling and compassionate, and where people can really connect in the long term, so that they can nurture that drive system more.
And I think the awareness of these systems is also a really, really nice hack for people, just to become aware in critical situations, to become aware which system is now active, from which place am I now acting? Am I acting from a place of being threatened? Am I acting from a place of intending to make a connection? Or is my system of drive and creativity the driving force at the moment?
Yes, yes, very important reflection. And I think that's really key, right? That's also been a little bit my experience that, you know, it is somewhat of a paradox that has puzzled me a little bit, that we hire, as you said, for creativity. And in the interviews, we really look out for people who are out of the box thinkers, something special, memorable, and unique in a way. But then once they're in the organization, we really try hard to socialize them and can, you know, make them fit a certain mold of what an ideal employee looks like. And it is a bit of a paradox that really puzzles me, and I don't understand exactly why. Of course, I have a few conjectures from like my background in psychology as to why we do that as humans, but I would be also curious to hear your thoughts on why do you think that happens?
Yeah, I think some of the traits of these creative, outside the box thinkers are very appealing. And they bring the promise of fostering innovation. And this is something that organizations crave at the moment, because they feel like the world is changing so fast. We need to be ahead of the game. And in order to be ahead of the game, you need to be innovative. And in order to be that, you need some people who are able to think in different ways, or to recombine things in new ways. So they know that there is a gap, and there is the tendency to fill that gap with somebody. But what people often don't consider, I guess, is the consequences that this has on the other parts of the system. It's like a little bit like an organ transplant. You know, if you if you transplant a new organ into an existing organism, and that organ is too different, then the body will try and get rid of it somehow, or will have an allergic reaction to try and expel the invader. And I think that is one of the major challenge when thinking about how do I bring a diverse and high performing team together? How can I have a degree of diversity that people can still cope with? Because
Right.
if somebody is too out there compared to the other parts around them, then this might not be ideal, because it costs then a lot of energy to work against this this mechanism of wanting to repel what doesn't belong.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a very interesting way to think about it. And certainly, I think the current conception of organizations, which I also see, is moving away from a more mechanistic machine paradigm of organizations to humans. That's interesting to think, if people or groups of people are different organs, that there's something that needs to unite them in order for the living organism to survive, right? They need to be connected, but still the organs, they have their own specific function, and they are diverse in the set of things that they can do and how they add value. And that's a very interesting way to look at it. What is that balance of how do you maintain diversity without harming the survival, or threatening the survival of that organization? How does that work? Like, what is the thing that underlies that connection from your perspective, the thing that we absolutely must unite on?
I think a common purpose does help. You know, if people have a shared mission of what they would like to change in the world and why that is important, then it's easier to tolerate people who think, speak in a different way from ourselves. But it's also a little bit in every individual. It does matter how you phrase things. And sometimes people mistake being honest and being candid with being rude. So you can be candid and loving at the same time, or you can be candid and understanding. And I think I was also the guilty party at some points. Sometimes I can come across as more aggressive than is helpful or than is even intended. I don't notice that because I get carried away by my passion, but it can feel not so nice to the people around me if I do that.
Yeah. I am certainly a culprit of that. I have a lot of, at least in the last 3 months, I think I got a lot of feedback on, Neha, we know you're passionate, but sometimes please, please calm down.
and it's a learning process. And also, criticizing or asking critical questions out of a mindset of curiosity and humility and empathy, rather than from a high chair or from what would you call it, from a pedestal, and say, I know what the world is supposed to be like and you're doing it wrong. And so that sometimes it's nuances, but they have a very different impact on how people feel around you. And at the end of the day, that's what we want, right? We want to work in a way that makes people feel good about what they're doing.
Absolutely. And it also seems to me that, for us to achieve that, I think, yes, on the individual side, we need to be careful of how we approach people, and do we extend the level of compassion to them that we expect that they, extend towards us. But I also feel like there is a need for a foundation of psychological safety within a team like that, for people to really understand that, or have a shared sense of safety, and knowing that when a person is approaching them, if they're passionate or, if they have a different opinion, they're doing it from the best intentions. And there is a level of trust and understanding within that team, which I also feel is really important for diversity, right? It's probably also the glue that holds everything together if you have that psychological safety.
Absolutely. It's possible to accept the harshest of criticism if you feel that comes from a person who really cares about me and who says that to me out of a willingness to help me.
And one of the things, Sonja, I wanted to get your perspective on, because I know you do a lot of work with creativity, and you are very creative as a person. And what do you feel is the link between diversity and creativity? How do those two things connect?
It's an interesting question. I think diversity is an enabler of creativity, because at the end of the day, if you would like to create something that has not been done before, or look at something from a different angle, you need different perspectives, different backgrounds. And like in art, a good piece of art is not easy to digest. Usually a good piece of art has contradictions and spikes in itself.
Yes.
It's not smooth around the edges. And I think that is a bit of a metaphor also what diversity does to us. It's easier to work in an environment that doesn't have these spikes. But it's probably more valuable in terms of the uniqueness of the output if we do have diversity.
Absolutely. And I also think, right, that it comes down to I see it even as just a very basic source of human potential, right? When I look at babies and kids growing up, there's so much like immense creativity before we put them into formal education systems, which in my view, and I feel very strongly about that, it also in a way kills that creativity and that diversity, right? Because it's in a way, you're putting on these uniforms and everyone has to behave the same way. And in that process of discouraging diversity, you're also killing the creativity in a person. And that's something that I also feel, moving from education to organizations now, somehow that worldview, that paradigm of, okay, we need to all work together to enable profit and business, and humanity serves the economy, is just a view that I feel like we need to change now. It's also what you said, right? The processor should serve the people, not the other way around. So how do we make the economy and the world of work serve this untapped human potential and serve humanity in general?
And there's a big need for change, because I think at the moment organizations are feeling a little bit of an outflow of people who are leaving these systems behind because they feel they don't have the freedom to create in a way that they would need in order to feel whole in their life. And organizations are losing talents at the moment. I mean, take my case, I could still be in all of these organizations that I left, but I left them consciously because I said, it takes me so much energy to manage the system and to manage myself in the system. I would like to bring this energy to a more productive use. And that's why I left to pursue a different path. And I haven't regretted that for one day or looked back. And I feel that many, many people are in a very similar situation at the moment and are on the cusp of leaving organizations because they are reconsidering their lives.
Yes.
Now organizations have an opportunity to course correct and to find ways of making work life more enjoyable for people in these organizations. So giving them what they need in order to feel at their best and to be at their best. And these are not rocket science things that people need in order to feel alive at work. But you do need to cater for them, and you do need to be very conscious about that.
Absolutely. Do you have any examples off the top of your mind of where you see certain leaders or organizations really making a difference in this space?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily want to call out any big players, because very often they are used for public relations purposes, and then you sometimes speak to employees who know the behind the scenes view and say, it's not really quite like this.
Yeah.
So I would be cautious on quoting things unless I have really seen them with my own eyes. But I think there's examples of leaders who ask their people not about what do you want to contribute, but what can I contribute as a leader to make it easier for you to be at your personal best. And I think that's the starting point, this shift in mindset, not how can I use people as a resource to my best intentions, but how can I be a resource for people and allow them to thrive and at the same time to do something for the business.
Mm-hmm. And have they, in your experience, the leaders that have extended that, what is the reaction that they've met with from the employees? Is that something people are keen on, exploring with them, or do you feel like there is some hesitation because of the world that we live in right now? It's just not the norm anymore, right, to do this?
Yeah. So when I tried this in the leadership positions that I held, usually people were surprised in the beginning, but all of them opened up. I asked people straight out, can you tell me what motivates you? Because if I know what rocks your boat, then I can make sure you get some of that. And I also shared with them what motivates me. And if you have that knowledge, then you can serve people the way that they work best.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think one of the general, especially for the creative thinkers and for the outside the box thinkers, they need the freedom to create. So if you hire highly creative people and you then box them into a small job description, that's bound to go wrong. So I think it's important. Of course, there's nearly no job that is completely free floating where you can do anything as you like. But it's it's important to have that transparency and that clarity around what's the free space in which you can create, and in which projects or in which assignments do you have to be more careful or onboard 20 stakeholders before you decide anything. And to have that clarity, that makes it easier to live with the boundaries as well, to say, okay, this is the playground, and this is where we need to be mindful of certain limitations.
Yes, yes. And I like what you're saying, right? That you approach this from both ends. You're approaching this from the individual end to see what is the need in the individual inside, right? The inner game, the aspirations, the motivations, what makes them tick, and what really needs, what they really need as a person. And then there's this other systemic change that needs to happen, right? Like, why do we have very narrow job descriptions that limit people and put boxes around what they do? Rather, why not have clarity on the why and, what is the main contribution, and leave it to people to come up with the how. So I like that we need to really think about from both perspectives, from the individual, but also the systemic perspective, on how to make this shift really happen.
Yeah, and don't get me started on performance management. I think that is a huge killer of creativity and productivity, is to performance manage people and thinking that they need a carrot and a stick in order to do something well. The opposite is true. I think we have the scientific evidence nowadays that it's counterproductive to have the standard performance management and offering people bonuses for doing something, but still, it is still being done. And that's what puzzles me.
Yes, that is one of the hot topics right now in HR and in business in general, right? This performance management. And yes, I've also been involved in very, very controversial debates about it. But it's true. You limit human potential, and you trap people in a system that actually doesn't speak to what humans are capable of. So what is actually, from your perspective, the alternative, right? Like, not going into detail about performance management, but some of the systems, what do you feel like are some shifts that organizations can readily make right now?
Get rid of individual performance plans. Also, that is easier said than done. But if you just try and simplify it to the absolute maximum, saying like, our company has had a very successful year last year. We would like to share that success with our people. And that is why everybody gets a little bit extra. We distribute that equally, and do not pin it onto individual people. That sounds like a fair enough and easy enough change to make, I find. And also make sure that you factor in how people behave. So not only do they bring their numbers, does the salesperson manage to ramp up the revenues, but also how do they behave? Do they behave in a way that enables others and inspires others? And that should also be a factor of how we talk about how valuable or how good somebody works, how well somebody works in an organization. And then team goals. Have the team decide itself what's an ambitious enough thing for you to achieve. What are little steps towards that? And then have the team measure itself by its own standards, hold them accountable to what they have come up with together, and that enables them also to hold each other accountable. And then you don't need the manager to always be behind them and breathe down their necks.
Yes. And you know what's really interesting, as you're saying this, it makes me realize that how much of this, what you just described, is common sense, right? That's how we operate in daily life. We talk to people, we try to understand their needs. We don't give them a ranking. Like, I don't go out in a shop and I look at a person and go like, I think you're a 3. It doesn't make sense, right?
No.
But at work, somehow it's really unnatural, but it's somehow become a part of our everyday work to assign numbers to people and to tell people what to do and, give top-down instructions. And when you compare it with normal life, it's just so absurd, right? That's not how we work.
Absolutely. If I have tea with my friend and I ask them, same time next year, how can I measure that you're still my friend? Or, how will our relationship have improved? And what are you doing to make that happen? It's a little bit odd.
Yeah, have a retrospective. I do have friends who do retrospectives with each other these days, but it's more in the spirit of, hey, how do we become better friends? But not never in the spirit of, oh, I need to evaluate whether you will be promoted to best friendship level now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we have just people asking these questions, these kind of obvious questions, to recalibrate what is actually normal, because many things that we do in business are not common sense and are not normal.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's also a little bit of, when talking to you, your mission, right? To make things more human, make them more natural in a way, as opposed to the artificial systems and procedures that we've set up in the world of work. So, what is it, Sonja? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, um, practically speaking, what you are doing to make that happen.
Lots of different things. So, in general, I like to work with teams and I like to work with individuals and understand what are their challenges now, but also mid to long term. Very often leaders approach me because they say, I have a couple of blind spots. I have a feeling that there's something that I'm doing or not doing that's hindering myself and the people around me. Help me find out what that is, and how I can get rid of that. And that can be the beginning of a very, very exciting journey of self-discovery and transformation. But then sometimes I also have teams who want to work with me because they say, we would like to work in a different way. We would like to work in a way that enables people's potential more. We would like to rethink the way that we do our work. How can we use technology to simplify some of the things we do? Can we empower people more? Can we give people more freedom to self-navigate and self-organize? And the great thing is that if there is a willingness to do that, and if the business context also allows for that, that there's a plethora of tools and methods that I can offer to these people. But the important thing to consider is the inner work is just as important as the outer work. So you can't just throw processes at people and at teams and say, you run along and have fun now with these processes. It does need some attention on the shifts that need to happen in people's minds, because new skills need practice. It's completely normal that you fall back to old habits, or that once the situation gets a bit tricky, somebody calls again for a strong hand to sort things out, instead of discussing in the team how to find the best solution. And it needs somebody to create and hold generative spaces. And that's a little bit one of the things that where I see my added value as the person who comes in to create spaces in which people can reflect about themselves, and about how the team works. And from that safe space of reflection and openness, there then comes the potential to evolve and to transform and to find different ways of solving problems.
Great. And what would be your one call to action, the one thing that you would urge everyone listening to this podcast to do?
When we talk about inclusive environments and creating spaces in which people can thrive, I would say the most important thing that people could do is go out and seek uncomfortable encounters. Try and meet a person that you would normally not speak with, and meet them not with the intention of persuading them from your worldview, but meet them with a loving intention of understanding what their world looks like. Go on an empathy walk with such a person that you would normally not engage with, and just go walking with them for an hour or so And just ask them curious questions about their life and try and be fully with them, with your mind and with your heart, and pretend that you don't even exist. You're just so tuning in to that person that you forget yourself. Immersion. And then notice what that does to you and do a journaling on that one.
I love that. And that's also a little bit, in keeping with what we wanted to explore with this show of Dropping Your Armor. It's also what you're saying is let's break down those walls between us, right? That thing that prevents us from truly understanding people and go in with an open mind and just learn, just listen. And I really, really love that. Sonja, we would not let you go without one more question, which is very important. And I would ask you to fill in the blank. When I drop my armor,
I become stronger.
Great. Thank you so much for having this conversation. And it was really lovely. And I hope that we can have many such conversations in the future. So thank you for your time, Sonja.
You're welcome. Thank you, Neha.